Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited because today is the first episode of my new series about the ultimate sewing guide for complete beginners on how to start garment sewing. Today's episode is all about the tools you need to start. So there's a few basic things you should probably have before you start garment sewing. The most important ones by far are thread, a sewing machine, and fabric, but there's a handful of other ones that you'll need as well to make your life easier. Let's start with the sewing machine. So in next week's video, I'm going to dive all into different sewing machines and what you need, but really all you need to know is you should probably have one. Yes, of course you can hand sew, but that takes forever and I would lose my patience. So I would say sewing machine is definitely one of the necessary tools. It can be a little bit of investment, normally between $100 and $200, but sometimes finding them on discount helps lower the price a bit. Additionally, I would say ask your friends and family and see if any of them have a sewing machine that they don't use or you might be able to borrow, because sometimes those are the things that people buy and never really end up sewing, unfortunately. Next up is fabric. For week 2, I'll be teaching you all about fabric, how to find it, where to find it affordably, and the different types. But fabric is the cloth that you use to sew any garment and is very necessary. Next up is thread. So thread is a string that people use for sewing. With thread, you want to find colors that match your fabric, but normally it's safe to just start off by buying white and black and gray thread because those are colors that tend to match with lots of different other colors. Thread, you want to make sure that it works well with your sewing machine. There's more and less expensive threads. I'd say as a beginner, you could probably just go to your craft store and find some thread. Additionally, I'll have links to all the products on Amazon that you can buy to start sewing in the description below. Tool that's very handy that you need is fabric scissors. For these, you don't need to go off and buy any expensive ones quite yet. And if you want to, you just buy a brand new pair of regular scissors and just make sure you don't cut them with paper. And they should work fine for cutting fabric as well. Yeah, they're just scissors. There's not much more to say about that. A seam ripper. I have a photo of what this tool looks like, but it helps you take out stitches once you've messed up. Or sometimes you have to take them out just because you're sewing a gathering stitch or some other thing in sewing. Sometimes they'll come with the sewing machine, but other times they won't, so it's important you buy one. Yeah, just make sure you have that before you start sewing. Pins. Pins are a very important thing when sewing, and they're little, I'll have a photo of them, but they help hold together your fabric when you're trying to sew it in place. I tend to use a ton of pins, and I would recommend that you have some. Additionally, some people use sewing clips, which those work fine as well as an alternative. I just haven't invested in any quite yet. And when you're talking about pins, you also need a pin cushion. A pin cushion is just where you poke your pins into to keep them safe. Sometimes there's magnetic ones that you can buy, or for week 4, I'll be actually sewing a pin cushion with you and teaching you how to make one if that sounds interesting to you. Next up, it's really handy to have a sewing needle. Even if you aren't hand sewing much, there's definitely times when you'll have to hand sew things like buttons or other small details. So it can be really useful to have a sewing needle. A measuring tape is essential to sewing, not only to measure your own body measurements, but also to measure fabric. I think sometimes this can be overlooked or forgotten about, but it is very important before you start sewing. And when we're talking about measuring tapes, also a straight edge ruler for measuring is also very important. So some people have rotary cutters or rotary boards, so I have one and I use the straight edge that came with that. But you don't need to make the investment in a rotary cutter or rotary board quite yet, just as long as you have the straight edge. That's about all you'll probably need for now. Next up, you'll need some marking tools for your fabric. This could be tailor's chalk or a water erasable pen, or I know there's lots of other products that they sell, but just anything to make a mark on your fabric that's not permanent. So this is not a normal pen or a Sharpie, it's specific for fabric. As I mentioned earlier, I was talking about rotary cutters and rotary boards. These definitely exist and help make you cut straight edges a lot easier. which I'd say you don't have to buy one quite yet, but if you do think that you'll be sewing for a while, then it's definitely something to consider investing in. When sewing, it's really helpful to be able to iron things in place, to iron out wrinkles in fabric, and to iron hems, etc., which is why having an iron and an ironing board is very helpful. You don't have to go out and buy any special iron or ironing board, just one you have in your laundry room will work fine. That's what I use. But of course, if you don't have one, you'll probably want to make sure you go and get one. For the ironing board, especially when you're starting sewing, you can just fold up towels and use that for temporary, but in the long run, I think you'll probably enjoy having an ironing board, not only for sewing, but also for ironing other things. Bobbins. Bobbins are something that you use in your sewing machine that you put thread on, and it's important that you have some of these. Sometimes they come with sewing machines, and other times you may have to buy extra. It's important that you make sure that the bobbins you buy are compatible with your sewing machine, as some sewing machines are kind of weird about that. Last but not least, you'll want to have a large surface where you can cut fabric and sew. If you have a table, that works great, or additionally, if you have a hardwood floor, that works as well, which is not ideal. Of course, I cut large pieces of fabric on hardwood floor sometimes as my table isn't very big. But if you could find a large table somewhere, or in your garage or something, I recommend maybe bringing that into your sewing space. That's all I have for today's video. Those are really just kind of the basic essentials that you'll need to start sewing. In case you're new here, this is part of my course on how to start sewing for beginners. Through this course, I'll be walking you through everything you need to know to start sewing your own garments in only 12 weeks. Please subscribe to this channel and turn the notification bell to find all my other videos and to continue in this series. Make sure to join me next week as I talk about fabric. Where to find it, and how to get it affordably, and the different types of fabric needed for garment sewing. Additionally, make sure you follow me on Pinterest and Instagram to see some sewing tips and tricks, to get outfit inspo, and to follow along with what I'm making. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. If you have any questions about sewing or comments, please leave them down below in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye!